Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then please do subscribe to my channel and give my videos a thumbs up if you like them. Also, do follow me on Instagram where I post all the new updates about my upcoming videos. So first, I just wanted to announce that there is a vlog coming real soon which is going to answer all of the questions that you guys have been asking about me. Also, I'm going to do a video to show you guys how to annotate things from your Uworld into your first aid, and I'm going to give you a tour of my first aid. So this has been the most requested video for a real long time, so I decided to explain thoroughly all the resources that I used and the time that I took for my USMLE Step 1 prep. So to start off with, I'm a 2017 graduate, and after my graduation I did a one-year internship, which is also called your house job, which is not mandatory in Pakistan for getting your degree, but you need it if you want to do residency over here. I just wanted to do it because I wanted to learn more about the clinical side. So yeah, that's what I did for a year. So after my house job, I took a year off to give myself sufficient time to get a good number of researches and to give my USMLE Step 1 exam. During this time, I was able to get a good number of publications, and obviously I gave my Step 1 as well. One more thing that I was doing in this time was I was doing locum at my home school hospital. So locum is basically like a substitute doctor. So for example, if it's a public holiday or if a doctor cannot make it there in time, so I would go ahead and substitute in their place. The advantage of that for me was that I was able to stay in touch with my clinical side. So throughout this year, it wasn't like I had completely detached from the hospital setting. I was completely in touch and I was up to date with the treatments that were being given to the patients and so on. So at the beginning of this year, I started studying from physiology, and subsequently I did my anatomy and biochemistry. At this time, I was giving around 4 hours a day to studying, in which I would listen to the video lectures, and after that I would read the lecture notes. Once I was done with Kaplan lectures, I went ahead and did Pathoma, which was the Pathoma video lectures and the lecture notes. When I was done with that, it had already been like 6 months. So after this period, I picked up my first aid and I gave it my first read. So the first read of first aid took me about another month. As you guys already know, reading first aid can get really boring and sometimes you just don't feel like doing it, which is exactly what happened to me as well. So towards the end of the book, like towards the last 2 chapters, which I believe is respiratory and reproductive, I had just had it, you know, I was like completely saturated. So I started my Uworld subscription on a systemic mode, and I did my reproductive, and then I did reproductive from Uworld, and then I did respiratory, and I did respiratory from Uworld. So that way I was able to wind up my first aid and also do 2 systems from my Uworld. After that, I finished my first go of Uworld in a systemic manner, and by now we're like 9 months down. 2 months for finishing my first go of Uworld, 1 month for first aid, and 6 months for my Kaplans and Pathoma. Now the time period that I took for all these things, 9 months, is quite a lot. Like, it's a lot more than one should normally take. And as some of you might already know, I'm a good student, so I already had a lot of my concepts already clear, so I didn't have to invest a lot of time studying these things. But it was just that I wasn't giving my studies enough time because I was focused on other things in this period as well. Once I was done with my first go of Uworld, I went ahead and started my NBMEs. The first NBME that I took was my NBME 11, in which I had 177 questions correct, which if you multiply it by 1.4 because it was offline, I got around 248. After this, I started my second read of first aid, and this time my first aid was annotated with all the points that I had taken from Uworld. And while I was doing the second read of first aid, I did my NBME 12. Now in NBME 12, I had 172 questions correct, which adds up to a score of around 239. If you multiply it by 1.4, again, this was also offline. By this time, I was halfway done with my annotated first aid, and eventually I finished my first aid, and then I gave my NBME 15, which was also offline. In this, I had a total of 179 questions correct, which I multiplied by 1.35 this time, giving me a score of around 241.65. So yeah, by this time I was towards the end of the 10th month of my preparation, and I went ahead and resetted my Uworld, and this time I started doing it on a systemic mode. I initially tried having it timed systemic, but somehow that doesn't work for me, so I went ahead and changed that to tutored systemic mode. Once I was done with my second go of Uworld, this took me around another month, a month and a half actually, so we were like 11 months down the lane. I took my NBME 18. Now I took NBME 18 offline, and I had 174 questions correct, which gives you a score of around 243. And after this, I quickly revised my first aid one more time, which took me about a week. So now we're in the month of the exam, like we're in January 2019. So this read of first aid took me around a week, after which I took my NBME 19, which was the only NBME that I took online. In NBME 19, I scored around 239, I believe it was 238 or 239. So I didn't really care about the NBMEs because I personally felt that the questions weren't really good and they weren't really up to the mark, and sometimes the questions were really confusing. I mean, I couldn't really figure out what they were trying to ask. So I was really cool about the scores. I mean, they didn't really matter to me. My score target was 250 plus, and I somehow knew that I'm doing an okay job. So after this, I took my UWSA 1. In UWSA 1, my score was 262. After that, I started my final go of Uworld, in which I did my wrong questions. I wanted to do the marked questions as well, but then I didn't have enough time, so I just did my wrong questions, which took me another week. So now we're like a week before the exam, in which I did my biostatistics subscription in one day, and I did my ethics in about 3 days maybe. So at this time, I took my UWSA 2, in which I scored around 258, and after that I gave my first aid one final read just to memorize a few things, and the night before the exam then I just did the formulas once again from respiratory, cardiology, and biostatistics. I just revised a few terms again that I would often forget. And that's it. The next day I went ahead and I gave the exam, and as all of you already know, I scored a 250 plus. That's it guys, that's the video you've been asking for. This was my schedule during my Step 1 USMLE exam. I would study for 4 to 6 hours in the initial months, which I eventually increased to around 6 to 8 hours towards the middle, and towards the end, which was my dedicated period of like around a week or two maybe, I would study for like 16 hours a day, or maybe 18 hours, I don't know. For those of you who have been telling me that they've been having a difficult time studying because they do not have a study partner, I've made a study with me video which is going to be up next. So I hope that helps you guys study. And that's it. Happy studying guys. Bye.